Hello everyone, my name's Josh. Step a little bit closer. I'd like to start with the question though. I want you all to think back to your training experiences you've had over your adult lifetime. How many of those training experiences would you say are truly engaging experiences? And when I mean engaging, think about feelings of almost like lost sense of time, complete focus and attention to the training you're doing, being motivated to want to go through the next task or challenge, making interesting and informed decisions, getting real-time feedback about those decisions. The experiences that I've had in my lifetime don't reflect a training experience like that, unfortunately. I only need to think back to one of my many jobs as a warehouse pick operator. I was in a cold storage facility, picking cartons of food out of racking. I got the job through a labour hire company. To get that job, I had to simply watch a PowerPoint slide, watch another video, answer some multiple choice questions about definitions and such. Nothing really to do with the job I was about to do. It was more of a compliance aspect, I think. Anyway, I got that job, started working in a warehouse, and after a number of months, I actually hurt myself. I twisted my back. I was doing a task I wasn't really trained necessarily to do, but I was young, I did a job, I was told to do it. Fast forward, I was working in an office, and I had a very similar experience. The training I received was more PowerPoint slides, more instructional videos, more multiple choice quizzes, nothing really about the job I was about to partake in. And funnily enough, in an office, I somehow managed to hurt myself. I don't know how. Well, I actually do know how now, but at the time I didn't. At the same moment, I was actually studying. I was doing a PhD. And it really got me thinking. Got me thinking so much that I actually decided to do what most PhD students do, which is halfway through, you change topic completely. You throw out all your research work and start afresh. Because this idea of why am I continually making mistakes on the job? Wasn't I trained well enough to do this? You know, I think to other jobs out there, people who fly planes, people who drive tanks, people who operate on people. If they make a mistake, people die. So you look at the training they receive. They have quite complex, expensive, but world-class simulation systems. You know, training experiences that, as closely to life, mirror what the job it is they're going to be doing. And it actually assesses them. It gives them authentic data to feed back to them, to make them understand where their mistakes are, how they are human, how they can make errors, and then actually use that data to improve on those. So I got thinking, why can't we make all training to that standard? And cost, technology, this is a little while ago now, kind of forbade that type of approach, I think, into most industries. But I think today you can look around, you can look at all the other examples presented today. That excuse is no longer really there. And so maybe about 5 years ago, I started working with Bondi Labs. And it was really to investigate not just training, not just safety training either, but how do we enhance human capability by utilising technology? Whether it's before you start your job or whether you're on the job, there's always a chance to make the human much more valuable to the organisation they're working in, as well as doing it safely and efficiently. So I'm going to touch on safety for a bit more here, but I don't, this is an ag conference, so I'll get to some more agricultural focused examples a little bit later. But we have a big problem around safety, and unfortunately agriculture and logistics are seeing some of the worst fatalities, the most amount of fatalities, compared to any other industry sector. Non-fatal injuries, I was experiencing those. I'm sure most of you have experienced some sort of minor injury, twists, sprains, some of the most common ones we see in especially logistics areas. And we've been seeing a decline in these rates. And this decline may come from improved standards, improved safety cultures, improved technologies, and wearing of PPE is much more, it's essential now. But we have another problem here as well. and this decline is starting to plateau. And I only need to think, well, if the standards are there, the equipment's there, why aren't we still making improvements? It's because the human's there, and the human keeps making mistakes. So the best ways we can work with humans is to train them, to change behaviour. And so, I actually ran a study during my PhD to investigate this, comparing more engaging forms of training compared to the status quo. And I found that it works in terms of learning outcomes, in terms of engagement, in terms of that behaviour change you're really seeking. And it's not just me. The research field that I was working in at the time was constantly pumping out paper after paper, demonstrating in many different industry sectors that much more engaging, interactive, more visual, more immersive training environments are going to change behaviour far better than what you're currently using. Yet, there was still a disconnect between getting that into the industry. So we started working with Bondi Labs, and we investigated the problem a little bit more. And we've always approached our problems by focusing on individuals, the people that work. And we started to kind of break this down. At what points during an employee's life cycle are we training people? Are we introducing training? During recruitment, how are we identifying skills and capabilities before they start the job? How do we identify that someone's the right person for the job? During induction, during initial training, getting into that job, how are we delivering training? Is it expensive? Are we able to train them on authentic tasks, or are we training them on something different? Day to day, are we continually monitoring the skills and competencies of our workforce? And are we feeding any information back to them on this so they can actually provide more value to your organisation? And if we're collecting data, well, how are we keeping it? How accessible is that data? How authentic or useful is that data? Come the need for performance management, or come for more uneventful situations where it's more of a compliance or an incident management situation? How do organisations demonstrate that their workforce is aware of the risks associated with their work? And so we started investigating this problem, and it's not just safety, it's across the board. We've been looking into agriculture. Biosecurity is one of our key areas we've worked in. And in recruitment, just like my experience was, we relied on either someone else taking care of the recruiting or a little card that takes, a license that takes care of my statement that I'm fit and capable to do the job. During induction, well, we're using techniques my grandfather was using 80 years ago. And these techniques are very well known to be less interesting, zoning out, not having those feelings of engagement at all. And in terms of authenticity of the training, on-the-job training, face-to-face training, for sure, but that's actually quite expensive. So how do we provide a similar experience, but at scale? And day-to-day, how are organisations monitoring and assessing? Well, they're not. And if they are, it's more of maybe a randomised drug test here and there. I think some organisations and industries are taking the lead in this, but across the board, in terms of my experiences, especially in warehousing, it's non-existent. And then if they are collecting data, well, it's often hidden behind an LMS system that only one person in the company knows how to use. The data being collected is far from authentic to the tasks that I'm good at doing at work or that my job requires of me, which means how useful is that data if you need to come and use it? So we decided to look at building a solution, and this solution aimed to be engaging in all the different ways that I explained earlier, providing interesting challenges and choices at every moment of your training, being authentic, being task relevant, almost simulating the experience you're going to have out in the field, but being able to do it in a much more safe and risk-free environment. So all the mistakes you make are in the simulator before you even get out to work. It's also a solution that can be allowed to be monitoring individuals day to day. And we actually find organisations, and I'll give an example a little bit later, where contractually individuals are able to demonstrate their skills and competencies weekly, monthly, and that actually gives the organisation assurance that their workforce is up to task. And because they have that data and it's accessible, we've got an analytics platform, then it's actually useful to them. They can actually use that data not just to feed back to the employees themselves, but they have confidence in that data because it's more than just bums on seats. It's actually quality data around the decisions being made in the training. So I've got a quick video snippet. I'm just going to play it. Yep. Okay, so we've been using Cube's our simulation training platform, but it hosts on top of it a number of different simulation training modules, primarily focusing in the logistics, safety, biosecurity space. But Bondi Labs has been developing these type of simulation systems for a number of years, even in agriculture, such as agricultural plant health inspection work, integrated pest management, rural healthcare workers as well. But I'd like to finish up on just a quick case example with some of our earliest work was actually with Chevron Australia. They are operating a large oil and gas operation off the west coast of Australia. It was a gas refinery built on top of a nature reserve. So you can imagine that the government and state-based compliance around this was some of the highest we've ever seen. So Chevron had a real commitment to protecting the biodiversity of that work environment. It was actually an island. And they had implemented a lot of money, a lot of time and effort protecting all the different pathways going onto the island to protect it from invasive pests and disease. And the biggest thing that kept them up at night was still people, because they can engineer controls, they can plastic wrap machinery going over to the island, but they couldn't stop people from making mistakes. They couldn't keep monitoring people as effectively as they could protect the other pathways into the island. So we worked with Chevron a number of years ago to develop some of the first simulation training modules. And these focused on all the different key areas of the employee life cycle that I mentioned before. Up front, at the induction period, initial training, they were able to create authentic training experiences that replicated what quarantine inspectors were about to do out in the field. Day to day is probably one of their best examples where they can actually contractually require quarantine inspectors to use the simulation system to refresh themselves at 5 a.m. before they even start work. So the mistakes they make on the day are in the simulator and not out in the field. And because they have that data that they're collecting and they have that confidence, they're able to meet their necessary compliance requirements to the rest of the industry. And so Cube's been used by a number of organisations, and we've loved to kind of show off some of the more modules we have to offer and have a chat about some of the work we've been doing. So thank you.